Before we start on the topic, a quick introduction for each of us. I'm Naveen Kukreja. I run PaisaBazaar.com and brand for PolicyBazaar.com. We are a marketplace for financial products, for lending and insurance products. What do you share?
Hi. I had the new digital business for Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail.
Hi, Manish. I head Jet Privilege, which is a loyalty program, and we run it as a separate business.
Okay. Just starting off on the topic, I was reading somewhere that 90% of the data is produced in the 90% of all the data has been produced in the last 2 years, which basically means the data is tripling every year. And if you look at what amount of data we carry, the mobile phone is a huge source of data that we're providing to multiple brands that we have the apps for, or the search when we search for anything. Most of us now wear wearables or fitness trackers, which is again giving a large amount of data to various companies and entities for them to start using it. At a marketing level, given what happens in the digital world, and a lot of spends are moving from offline to digital, that starts to produce immense amount of data, whether it's in the form of impressions, clicks, by time, by medium, by channel, and what kind of communications you do. And that is allowing, at least theoretically, for marketers and businesses to start using more and more data in the analysis and strategies. Having said that, on the other hand, there are things like too much data being available, and could that be causing confusion? And could we be using too much data from consumers and invading their privacies, and those factors to consider? And buzzwords like machine learning and AI. So we'll try and cover a few of these topics over the next 25 minutes or so. I'd like to start by asking the fellow panelists on sharing their context on how they see data being more and more available in their industry, and how are they trying to kind of see the impact of that on the way the companies make the strategy. Starting from you, Shah.
Yeah. So the way I look at it is in terms of, so far most of our organizations have been used in analyzing data, or data analytics was more of a post-mortem, which is like, a lead time of a month or a 15-day, depending on how the organizations are structured. With the digital play coming in, the moment our category became digitally shoppable, the data started throwing up ability to react real time. Now, the overall organization may not have started going there, but the pieces of it has started going. Let me give you an example. So when we set up our online piece, the first data is in terms of conversion, and how can we predict the conversion? So we realize that if a consumer who is browsing our site more than 8 minutes, the probability of him or her shopping tends to go up by 50%. The moment he or she crosses 14 minutes, it hits 70 to 80%. I'm with the writer that it is not because the site is slow, right? So that was first level of prediction. Analytics enabling us to predict, this is where it is. So what it led to from an online perspective, that means give him more relevant products, exhibit more relevant products to based on his or her browse behavior. The second level, which was more of an online to offline kind of integration, was in terms of look at analyzing the search query volume on the site and enabling prediction of what should be stocked in the stores. For example, if somebody is searching red check shirt and you map it to the geography from where the search is coming, and then you quickly plug into the retail stores in that geography, do they really have that kind of inventory? So this, if you look at holistically, there are two levels of reason. One is push from the consumer that understand me, and beforehand when I walk into a store, or whether it is a physical store or whether your online store, start showing me what I would really like to do. Second is at an organization level, because what technology has enabled is customization at a mass level, but to an individual. Now that is the larger challenge which organizations like us will have to work with the analytics of the data.
Hi, so I think in our case, I'll try and give you an example of how when we started off our journey 3 years back. It was a loyalty program. It was largely a frequent flyer program in the airline. Now, to make it more appealing for lifestyle and to serve value to our partners, not just the credit card but others, we had to figure out a way to make value out of the inherent data which we have. And the start of the loyalty programs worldwide, if you look at American Airlines, will start to collect data. So for us to engage on that journey, we actually started mapping out all the different systems which are available and the amount of data which we have. And we didn't go out looking for this data. This is the data which is available in our own system. 23 different systems mapped together to bring about a customer single view, what we call it. And we called it as our in-house data management platform. Now, this data management platform basically became more powerful than the CRM capability of the CRM system. Purely because for every single customer, we have close to around 1,800 different attributes which are available. And available not only to us, but the data analytics team to analyze a little further, but also to the marketing team to cup out different campaigns and arrive at different segments. And we used some predictive analytics capabilities initially to understand what's the right segment depending on the history and the response time, etc. So technology has evolved and a lot of capabilities have been brought in. We keep experimenting with a lot of initiatives and we've started to realize certain benefits of it immediately and some over the long run. So something which doesn't work, we kill it and start something new. So from a data analytics perspective, the core engine is largely the customer data, the transaction data, and scored across RFM model to understand where they are spending and what they are doing. And this is just a transaction. We also have data mapped to the same customer, their experiences. If you have done a web check-in, if you have done a kiosk check-in, what time you have done it and what time you have completed the transaction. So all that information is available to create certain segment and understand the behavior of the customer. And on the other side, what we have done is use this data as a platform to map it with the marketing channels, whether it is web or whether it is email, to create certain linkages to personalize the behavior and also to segment the customer. So 10 of you who log in and have a different personas will get different messages on your website, on your experience when you log in onto Jet Privilege. And that's the power of data to be able to use it in effect.
Thanks for those examples. One example that I'd like to share from financial services in the way we use data, especially in measuring advertising and specifically measuring television advertising, is when we started doing brand for Policy Bazaar, we were told that GRPs and the rating points is the only way to measure brand. However, we said no, there should be more. And what we started doing was, and a lot of learning for that has come from US for us, is that we knew that the data for when our ads were running was available by minute. And given the fact that we are an online marketplace, and which means essentially we are a single shop face, everybody has to come on our website to interact with us. We also had minute-by-minute traffic estimator, or traffic data. So what we started doing was that we started running algos and figured out that within a very, very short duration of running a television ad, you see a spike in your traffic, and then it starts to die down. We said, of course, then you can measure the impact of a television ad to a fairly accurate level, much better than any rating point data that kind of gives you. But we also had to keep it short so that it doesn't get polluted by other ads which are running during a campaign. So we arrived at what we call as 8-minute impact model. What we do is that whenever we run an ad, we measure the spike for the next 8 minutes, and it may not help us in measuring the absolute impact of that particular ad, but what it greatly helps us is in measuring relative impact of one ad versus the other, one channel versus the other, one program versus the other, one genre versus the other, one day or time versus the other. And that now drives all of our television marketing decision. I thought I'll just share that kind of an example. While we talked about the good examples that we all have seen across our industries or companies, have you seen any area where you were getting a lot of data, but you could not, and you tried to make sense of the data, but could not make sense, or the impact was very limited? Any examples from that?
Yeah, so from an ABFRL perspective, when you have an larger offline business and a very small online business, it is but natural that, most of the data which can actually be converted into intelligence or actionable insights lies in the offline part, which is extremely unstructured and untracked. That is the larger challenge for an organization like us, especially when most of the new generation consumers are moving online. And their expectation from a brand or from an organization like us is know me well, know me better, don't ask me, right? And that insight, that data points lies somewhere, but we are unable to capture it and present or interact with our new generation of consumers in a manner which is equivalent to his expectation, right? His or her expectation. That is a large challenge. For example, in store, I am not able to predict why a particular product is tried but not bought. Mm-hmm. Because that data is there, but it is never captured, right? Now, this is a challenge. Second, we have a large loyalty base, but that loyalty base, unfortunately, unlike a category, for example, air miles, where it is in the interest of the consumer that he keeps updating his information on your portal so that he gets the benefit, it is not like that in my category. Yeah. My consumer walks in, he gives some data, whether it's old number, he has changed the number, he never takes the trouble to update it, right? Now, these are the challenges which we have, for which a straightforward solution or an approach, unfortunately, is not there. There needs to be a lot of homegrown technology solutions or solutions which needs to be built. That is the larger challenge for us to really convert these unstructured data into an insightable, actionable approach.
So I think for us, it's not that we have the data. In many cases, we never had the complete set of data.
Sure.
So I'll give you examples of how we started to innovate to bring that view in our system. Members use credit card, they earn miles, and they use credit card. What they buy, we don't know. Okay? So yeah. One of the things which we have done now is we've done an exclusive deal with Visa. So all our co-brands are going to be with Visa. With that, we have negotiated with Visa to get the Visa Net access, which essentially will give me the where my cards are being spent, etc. So there are ways to structure and get the information. That's one example. The second example is we wanted to see and a category which is very different from the air travel category, yeah. Dining. Now, how do I get information about and entice my customers about to make it relevant for dining category? We partnered with Dine Out, and in that process, you make a booking in a table booking or a reservation or experience, you earn miles. Through my platform, which is in the dining platform, or through Dine Out, we get that data. Now, suddenly, we are able to now get the information about where you are actually dining. Now, makes it relevant for me to put certain marketing message around whether you are doing enough to earn your the mile or the dream holiday which you're working towards. We ran into another similar challenge whereby we have this shopping platform which is an affiliate structure. Now, affiliate structure, when you're searching for it, we don't know what you're actually searching, because at the end of the day, the search query is being fired to Flipkart or Amazon. We invested and created a Solar database and mapped it with the product categories which are available across. So now we know what the customers are searching. Now all this information is now being lead back in the attribution to say, okay, these are the customers. Naveen is searching for this particular products. In the last 30 days, in the last 90 days, in the last 120 days, these are the products you search. Now that is insightful information for marketing to be able to make certain elements and create certain campaigns around it, depending on what the business needs are.
Perfect. It's a very, very good example, but just kind of on that point, are you able to already think on how would you use that data, or are you at a stage where you're saying that, okay, we'll start getting data from Visa and the dining, etc., and then we will over time figure out how is that data useful to us, if at all?
No, large chunk of the data, so Visa data is being used right now. To approach certain merchants for certain offers. But apart from that, we have the data available from our existing platforms which are being used for segmented campaigns. Okay. Now, we may send you a particular email with a particular offer. Now, when you log into the website, I need to make sure you see the same offer. Now, unless and until we are able to personalize that entire journey, it will not happen. So a lot of this information which is coming out of this data set, DMP, is being used across these areas.
Yeah, just one example from the financial services, and that's happening right now all across the world, is this hunger for additional data. So especially in lending, where you're going to lend to the customer, there is this thing called, if you've heard about alternate data. So capture as much data from the consumer, whether it's get him to do social sign-in, Google sign-in, get all the data from consumer, get his mobile behavior, website behavior. However, what we've seen in India, in the lending industry, and similar stage in developed market like US, is that all of that additional data is adding very little value to what's, let's say, for example, a credit bureau data or indicator. So from an analytics perspective, one thing to call out or flag out always would be that, are you collecting a lot of data which is going to be useful and you know how to use it, like Manish was talking, or it may actually be unrelated. But having said that, you might actually know that only when you collect it and try and kind of build causal relationships. On the point that you were mentioning, Shiv, on unstructured data and offline data, there are technologies now, at least in developed world, which allow you to kind of use NLP, natural language processing, use unstructured data analysis, start to do facial recognition, which Manish, I would like to kind of share your example on, and kind of convert a lot of unstructured data into analyzable format. But do you see that in India we're still at a very, very early stage, and there's a skill gap or understanding gap or technology gap, so to say, to start using that at a meaningful scale?
See, I think these are at a stage where there is a lot of experimentation which needs to happen, right? There is an ecosystem of startups which are emerging, which are trying to solve this kind of puzzle, right? Whether it is even accurately measuring the walk-in at the store. Today, it's most of the times it is done in a very crude manner, which is like, your gatekeeper or your watchman does a counter. Now, that itself is being moved in terms of looking at video analysis or using your own in-store camera and analyzing the walk-in, drawing up heat map within the store, where most of your consumers are spending time. Now, this particular technology is evolving, but there are a lot of startups who are working on it. At the same time, the larger challenge is we are fixated from a CapEx perspective, from a large corporate mental biases, right? Because we look at these as a large project rather than becoming nimble and experimenting with multiple startups like these and trying to relate the results from different stores and then identifying what is working for us and moving ahead. That is a mindset shift, which is a challenge, right? But otherwise, as you rightly said, that NLP is moving, which is a more on online side of it. When the 99% of the organization is dependent on the physical stores, that is where decision-making needs to become faster from an experimentation perspective. And that is where some of the agile companies are moving. If you look at globally from an apparel perspective, for the last 10 to 15 years, the biggest growth drivers have been in fast fashion, right? Yeah. Whether you look at Uniqlo, Zara, or anybody of these kind of brands. Now, how are they doing is, they are looking at these unstructured data on a more and more near to real-time basis. And taking this data, bringing it to their central office, where the designers and the product and inventory allocators are sitting. So for example, a lot of our catchment areas, the population could be above 40, 45, majority of the population. But your inventory in that store is not necessarily commensurating to that. Yeah. Right? So, because we follow in apparel a thumb rule of, 1, 2, 2, 2. If it is a shirt, it is 38, 40, 42, 44. 40, 42 is double, always in your orders. But in a catchment area, it could be that you have more 42, 44 size people. Now, that is where the data starts playing in terms of making your inventory more apt to the audience, or to the walk-in.
Okay, so I think...
You were mentioning about one example where you're using machine learning or starting to use that?
So we're doing a couple of experiments on using artificial intelligence and machine learning. One which has gone live almost 2 months back is we use Watson Marketing. Watson Marketing is the IBM Marketing Cloud tool. Now, as part of their upgrade, they are enabling a lot of Watson AI capability in the solution. One of the solution is send time optimization. Now, what the send time optimization actually does is actually sending you the email the time you actually open it. Now, to actually compute this, the machine has to learn over a period of time what time your actually mail is dropped and what time you actually open it. So it's a continuous learning process which is there, and it requires humongous computational power, which in a traditional way it is practically impossible to do it. So what it does is that it basically ensures that the open rates of the emails are much better when we send out communication. So we experimented with this particular thing. The capability is there. We have fine-tuned it, and now it's almost on the verge of coming to a steady state where the send time optimization would work. That's one set of it. The second set of it is what we are currently doing is, some of you may have heard about it, we're building a chatbot. Now, chatbot is a self-help which actually processes the natural language. Now, what we're basically innovating there is integrating content along with it. So if you're asking a question, it is answering, not just giving simple answers, but also directing it to relevant content as well. Now, this is where there could be some learning, and we've seen what happened to Indigo chatbot when it started it. The sentiment is not able to detect. So our attempt is to basically open it in a closed user group, learn it from it before we throw it open for our members.
Sure. One question that was coming, given the two of you here, which are family business kind of driven companies or strong promoter driven companies, how important do you see their buy-in on the whole role of an investment into analytics, or are you guys kind of past that stage and it's now the management who's deciding it?
I think we passed that stage when we carved the program out to keep it separate. I think that was a much bigger decision.
Sure.
Thereafter, the mandate is to grow the business.
Sure.
So what is right for the business, and if data analytics has to be there with relevant tools, yes, it is must, and a relevant investment has to go in.
I think that's... and most of the organizations have passed that phase of understanding or appreciating the importance of data and its ability for us to react more, better. Right? The challenge lies in whether the overall organization, starting from your grassroots in-store sales guy up to the top, looking at data and reacting objectively rather than subjectively, right? Because we are used to this whole concept of, my friends like this, so probably everybody would like it, right? At different layers, right? Now, there is an element of being intuitive, which is absolutely required for success, but there's an element of data-led actions. Now, I think on both these sides, organizations have come on board, most larger organizations have come on board, there is a centralized team. The larger challenge is, how do you expect, or how do you make the overall organization bottom up, react and act based on data?
Perfect. Thank you. Very pertinent points. We're almost out of time. So just any closing comments or thoughts that you would like to leave the audience with on the analytics part?
I think two things. One is, we know the data privacy element is going to dramatically change in the country. And if whatever is we have seen so far in terms of the model laws which have been published, it's pretty much modeled on the European GDPR regulation. It's a big challenge for all marketeers to be able to leverage this data to make use of it. Today, a lot of cross-pollination of this data is happening, but come tomorrow, there will be a significant amount of restriction which will be imposed. So, which essentially brings to the point that, okay, what are you doing with your own data on your own assets? And a good starting point is to figure out a way to create your own data management platforms and make use of it in your marketing campaigns. That will give a significant value before we even go out. So we currently don't use any of the other outside data. We have enough data on our own platform to be able to do it. Simply because we know that there is a regulation coming. We are governed by the EU data protection policies. And we know in India, GDPR is coming. The model laws are out. And hopefully, if the government passes it sometime next year, it will be applicable.
Yeah, from my side, it is like, most of the times we get swayed by jargons. Don't get swayed, because ultimately the business needs you to grow the top line or reduce the losses, by that increase the bottom line. So data is essential. Use it judiciously and based on your need, right? And there is, as is with any of the new things coming in, there will be a lot of jargons which will be thrown at you, and please don't get swayed with that.
From my side, just the final thoughts that, given our population and the size, we are already the second largest internet user after China now. We've surpassed US in terms of number of users. We would be the largest or the second largest smartphone users. I think we just beat US to be the largest market for Facebook in terms of number of users. So over a period of time, we would be largest or second largest. I mean, that's just natural given the population. And data is going to become the biggest asset for any company. The people who use data well versus who don't use data well, I think will define the future of successful companies versus not so successful. On that note, we'd end the discussion. Thank you for your inputs and thoughts.